Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Deborah Peters Show. My name is Deborah, and I'm so thrilled to have you join me today. I have been having an absolute blast with this podcast this second time around, and we've come up on our 1 year anniversary. Make sure that you subscribe, like, and when you drop a comment, you'll have an opportunity to be part of one of my private groups. And in that private group, I'll host some live private webinars and cover off some tools to repattern your beliefs and to reboot your business and to help your relationships, to give you new ways of expressing yourself and really taking your health to another level. So, but you gotta drop a comment and you have to subscribe, because guess what? That's how the channel builds. When you drop a comment, when you subscribe, then Google does this magical stuff on the back end and it sends my podcast out to more people. And it's more people just like you that is going to make the difference here. So what are we doing? Well, today's show is all about health. And I want to just tell you a little bit first before I get into introducing my next guest that I had an epiphany. Well, I have had many. The first one I had was probably when I was 10. And I made some decisions about my life, which I'm literally living today. And that was to travel the world and to use my past experiences, no matter how egregious they were, to help people shift their lives into a higher state of being. And so I'm doing that. I'm working my way around the planet and I'm having fun doing it. And secondly was to build out this platform, this community of Neuroengineering Institute where people could come to actually stop focusing on what doesn't work in their lives and to let go of past experiences that are holding them back and to really take a step forward. I have this belief that most people really don't lead their lives. Most people accept their lives. And I've never been one to do that, no matter how hard it was and how much I wanted to say uncle and give in and just accept things the way they were. I'm not wired that way. I just can't do that. So that leads me to today's guest, and she's an absolute professional, consummate professional, Dr. Jennifer Roelands. Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, awesome. Glad to have you on. So you're a physician, and you can probably have to help me with your background. So you're a physician. You had a thriving, bustling practice in Missouri, and then decided that you really wanted to be able to offer a higher level of care to people. And you literally walked away from that, which must have been incredibly scary and hard to do, to move to another state and to launch as an integrative physician and to just be able to spend more time with your patients. And I mean, anytime you're walking away from a thriving anything, it's not easy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what happened? Exactly. Like what drove that? That's a big decision.
Yeah, part of it was my own health. I have Hashimoto's and PCOS, and I was having sort of seeing my own doctors and doing the things that they tell me to do and really
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. And so wow. I was really, I was taking all the medications I was supposed to, doing all the things I'm supposed to do. And I was still like exhausted, drinking coffee all day, just feeling not well. I just didn't feel well. And I sort of chalked it up to a crazy OBGYN life where you're delivering babies at 2 a.m. and I have 4 children and chaos. But I just wasn't settled with that answer, saying there's no way that it can I have to live like this, right? I just can't be like this for the next 40 years. So I started really diving into what am I missing in medicine? What is missing in medicine? And what I realized is we are not taught as physicians nutrition. We're not taught science-backed alternative medicine. We're not taught mind-body approaches and how important they are to the health of your patient. We're just not taught these sort of pieces that I felt like were really critical to me being able to heal myself. And I Yeah. And I realized, if I feel this way, then many patients over the 13 years I was practicing as a, conventional OB/GYN, I've said that to them, right? Like, oh, just follow
Yeah.
this. It's all going to work. It's fine. Oh, you're tired. It's just because you have this. I sort of saw myself going, wait a minute, I can't sort of keep this to myself. I
Right.
have to
Yeah.
help my patients heal themselves, and knowing that they can do it, their bodies are capable. It's just a matter of helping them find the right tools that work. And that's kind of what led me into kind of in this integrative medicine world, and learning that there's just so much more to medicine than just the Western philosophy. Eastern and Western have a lot of different utility in a lot of
Sure.
different ways.
Yeah, and they both have merit. I think the point I really want to make at the beginning of this conversation today is that it's not an either or, it's an and. And
Yes.
so, because I've been like, I've been through my, how shall I say, my shifts in perspective about the medical world, where I've really wanted to like tear it apart because I thought it was just absolutely unconscionable the way it's set up to treat patients. But then I kind of came around, and because I was just mad. I came around, and I don't see it that way anymore. It's definitely an and. Like, we need both, and there's a time and place for everything. The problem, though, Jennifer, that I have is that the approach of the allopathic medical world is never to question. Like, we know everything, you know nothing, and don't you dare question because of this diploma on my wall and this lab coat, you don't have any ability to question me. And that's the issue that I have, because it leaves a lot open for questioning. For example, why wouldn't we address nutrition before we start going down any other path? Why wouldn't we address eating patterns? Or, everything is consumption, right? Consume our thoughts, our emotions, our relationships, our environment, our food. Why wouldn't we look at that first? And so that's a problem that I have.
Yeah, and I think that the way that you feel is what a lot of patients feel, is they're saying, why can't I find a doctor who has a lot more tools in their toolbox to then help them with whatever their particular mission or goal is, right? Some patients don't want to be on any medications. They actually specifically come to me in my private practice because they're like, I am on all this, I want off. How do I get off? And some patients come to me because they also need a combination of both. They may have anxiety and depression and want to continue their Lexapro, but they also want to figure out what they can do to maybe in 5 years, 10 years to get off of it. So it's about tools in your toolbox and helping someone kind of navigate that and figure out what's right for them.
Absolutely. And to be encouraged to ask questions. And I think that that's where it all starts and stops. You can't change anything you're not aware of. So maybe this is where there's this big gap, is that at least the way I grew up, I remember my mom just pretty much worshiped a doctor, any doctor. And it didn't matter if they were giving her bad advice or not. She just, because that's the way she was taught to respect authority. And so many times they were misguiding her, but she just never questioned it. And I grew up questioning everything, so I was kind of seen as the rebel in the family. It's like, can't you just accept anything? It's like, no, I can't, because why would I? Why would you? Why would you just accept anything that someone has to say to you? And I think what's happening today is a blessing now that we have this whole new philosophy or approach to medicine, is that there's clues and there's answers in the clues. We just have to be willing to pay attention to them and not do a hard pivot immediately to a drug or a surgery.
Yeah, I mean, you're pointing out a lot of clearly broken things in the healthcare system, right? The fact that you have very minimal time with your physician, the fact that they are driven to, give you a quick plan and not really take into account your personal beliefs or your values or your maybe traditions. I mean, there's a lot of things I've learned in this fellowship about, traditional medicine and how much they can teach us about these things. And we're kind of, it's built in that way. And it certainly is. And I'm not anti-drugs because I certainly prescribe medications that are pharmaceutical companies, but ultimately we are driven a lot in the healthcare system by, by medications, right? Like they lobby in the Congress, they have a lot of power. And so therefore it's very easy to sort of write a script in 5 minutes and send someone on their way, as opposed to talking to them about what do you eat? When do you eat? What do you enjoy eating? What do you not enjoy eating? I mean, all of that takes time. The system is just not built that way. And I hope that the system will be built that way, that changes patients who, like you, question it, who demand different options, can then say, hey, I want a different way, and force the system to change. Because that's really what's going to happen, is that enough patients are going to say, hey, Dr. Jen, tell me about how I can fix my PCOS with food. And then, then enough patients are going to go to the multiple doctors, not find the right one, but find the right one. And that's going to end up being a popular person because they're sort of able to make a patient-physician partnership. So that will drive the system to change, I think. And I think also, we have to figure out how to help patients without drugs, like not go straight to the medications, but what else can we do? And really emphasize the fact that a lot of these medications have horrible side effects, but we never talk about that. We only talk about, it'll fix your depression, Lexapro, we never talk about all the bad things that can happen from prolonged use of Lexapro.
Well, no, that's kind of like swept under the carpet, right?
Yeah, Prilosec is a perfect example. Prilosec, and I don't work for any company, but Prilosec, people get put on these heartburn medicines for 20 years. They were never intended initially to be on for 20 years. They were only meant to do the 14-day challenge, as the commercial indicates. And then you got to figure out what's causing your heartburn and fix it. Well, now people are on them for 10, 20 years, and we're finding out that they're having chronic medical conditions because of Prilosec use long-term. And any of the acid blockers can be in the same category, and also having bone issues and all these cascade effects that we never talk about, and we need to. So I think we need to sort of be more open with our patients about what does this mean to be put on this medicine, and what are your alternatives?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that should be the burning question with every medication. Last night I turned on regular television. I can't remember the last time I turned on regular. It's been years, okay? And I think I was trying to watch like Jurassic Park or something, and every few minutes there's like every 5 minutes of TV there's 3 minutes of adverts, and the 3 minutes of advertisement is 2.5 minutes of different medications they're advertising. And it's fascinating to watch how they lead you on this journey. So at the beginning, they talk about how much pain you're in, how bad your symptoms are, and how it messes up your life and you just can't function. And then they introduce you to this wonder drug that, just take this drug, ask your doctor for it, make sure you get on this today, and it'll take away all of those painful problems. And then in hyperspeed, they list off all the side effects, like an aneurysm or a heart attack or holes in your stomach, or I don't know, whatever happens to be the side effect.
And the fine print.
This long, right? But then at the end, and this is where propaganda really is powerful, at the end, they always finish on the high note. Yeah, but, all these things can happen to you, but you're going to feel better when you die from something else. It's like crazy. It's just crazy.
Wouldn't it be great if it had like flaxseed, like fix your hormones? It works for blah, 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 blah. Side effects is you may get too tired of eating flaxseed.
It gets boring.
It gets boring, or, too much fiber, you go too much. But, it would be so great if we had those commercials, right? About like, guess what? You're in perimenopause and menopause or PCOS, you have a hormonal balance, flaxseed will be your best friend. Did you know that it's been studied to show that it can actually help with hot flashes. So it would be
Flaxseed's
awesome.
amazing.
It would be,
yeah,
it would be great if it had like, if we had some, it would cross across the commercial flaxseed that would have, making it look sexy or something in a smoothie.
I know, right? There you are, like having the flaxseed today. Oh my God, that's hilarious. Yeah,
we'll have
I know.
To make that commercial.
I think you should. I think you should. It's fascinating to me because I've always kind of questioned, and what's interesting to me is that most people don't question, and I just can't get my head around why you wouldn't question. That's how I always look at everything. It's like, well, why wouldn't you question that? It's like, but I think there's a whole program behind that of it's like a societal fog that, like I said in the beginning of the show, most people don't lead their lives. Most people accept their lives. And so when you accept things as they are, when they could be better, when you accept things because it's a small, tight situation you can control, but then all of your love and joy and expression is outside of that. It's like you just have to want to like stick your toe outside the line, basically, in order to get different answers. Because unless you start asking different questions, there can never be a different answer.
Yeah, and I think change is hard, right? For most people, they see it as an uphill battle for health, an uphill battle to change what they're doing. It's much easier just to refill the meds, or much easier just to,
but you see
those things.
I agree, but you see, that's why I think it's a societal fog. There's like this fog over the minds of society that has us well programmed into these benchmarks. It's like even getting your labs done and being told, oh, you're doing okay for your age. I wouldn't worry about how bad you feel. You're doing okay for your age. And it's like, yeah, but I don't want to feel my age. I want to feel 20 years younger. Like, I don't want to feel my age. I want to feel like vibrant and high on life and excited to get up in the morning. I don't want to be like that stereotype that's in the ads and on the television that is worn out and shutting down and bodies decaying. Like, that's not my reality. I don't want that to be my reality. So don't sell me some kind of standardized results graph and expect me to accept it. It's like, no, you can do better. We can always do better.
Yeah, I mean, you just basically described half of my patient population in my practice who's perimenopause and menopause, who are like, yeah, I know my levels are low, but I don't want to feel this way, right? I don't want to feel 55. I want to feel 35. I want to feel,
right.
And so, yeah, that's completely a unfortunate thing that happens, that patients are told it's normal, but it's really not normal for you, right? Like, I'm perimenopausal. I am not interested in my progesterone being 0.2, which it is. I'm interested in my progesterone being 10.
Let's get that up there. Yeah.
I want my progesterone higher. So like, that's just and I feel better when my progesterone's higher. So therefore, like, it's not normal for me. And that's kind of where this type of medicine is really about, is trying to figure out what is ultimately normal for you, what makes you feel good, what makes you feel like yourself, what makes you wake up in the morning excited to go and do things. How do we change that sort of thing? I don't know if you saw this article, because you said that, I don't know if you saw this article in Bloomberg that was in January, and there's also the Washington Post wrote about it, was that there's droves of perimenopause and menopause women leaving the workforce because of their health. The fact that they are, losing that sort of like feeling like performance and vitality, and can't sleep at night. So therefore their work during the day is being affected, and they're sort of leaving because we just don't have that menopause care good enough in the United States, right? They went to their doctor who told them your estrogen is 10. That's normal.
That's normal. Yeah.
Just 0.2. That's normal for menopause, which it is in the graph, but those women are having that affect their life, and they can't perform at the level that they want to perform, and so therefore choosing they can't be in this job. And what a bummer for like these companies, because that person is a wealth of knowledge, right? Experienced, brilliant, really kind of loss of so much quality in the workforce.
It's true. And, it's again, it's part of the system. There's a system, and the system is designed for us to hit a point, like a ceiling, and then exit to make room for new. So there's this constant like cycle, and you're expected to cycle out. And it's kind of good timing from a system perspective, not from a human perspective, but from a system perspective, it's really good timing that starts to click when a woman's in menopause, because they can spin her out, and they can, I just had a call just an hour ago from a woman that has been in charge of all kinds of interesting training mechanisms and HR mechanisms in large corporations. And she got spun out for 2 younger girls. Not that, it's nothing against the younger girls, but when you look at the big picture of this, you've got someone that is a senior level executive that's probably making a pretty decent top 6-figure salary with, buku benefits, right? And has an opinion that can really hold her space and not get overrun by anybody in the organization. And it's just so easy to cut that cost, spin her out. She's at an age where menopausal symptoms become stressful, and that adds to the dynamic. And you bring in 2 younger people, lower salaries, less opinionated, less able to hold their space in the face of resistance or any kind of pushback. And you've got this, it feeds the system. I'm sorry, but it's just the way it's designed.
Yeah, and I would argue that it occurs more with women than men, right? It occurs more in women who are starting to experience certain health issues that are causing impact on them,
sure, than
men.
I agree.
I mean, I don't have the statistics to prove that, but I can tell you that I hear way more of those scenarios in women than men.
Well, yeah, and I think I have an idea about that, because I've coached male CEOs for over 20 years in like huge different amount of industries in 19 countries. And so I watch my male clients go through hormonal dips and are challenged with brain fog, assertiveness, the desire to conquer, to kill and, hunt, kill and conquer, like that starts to wane off. Absolutely. But there's a different, and this has been a fascinating study for me for years, because I've also coached top women executives. And there's a different underlying, let's say secret society among men, where they champion each other from the beginning. And even though they might compete with one another, they help each other hold their own. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And for women, I don't think that that's necessarily happening. And unless women learn to relate to power differently, where they don't feel like another woman is their competition, and actually bond together and lift each other up and hold each other up, it will continue to be an issue for women more than it will be for men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a manopause that
there
does
is,
occur.
Right?
Not quite the same as menopause, but I do, and I do think in those respects too, the fact that you could be having, I mean, we know Alzheimer's is twice as much in women than in men, right? There's clearly a structural change that occurs in perimenopause and menopause for women that then also leads to inflammation that ultimately, here we go down the path. So you can imagine in those sort of situations too, that you're having your health affect you every day and feeling isolated too, right? Like feeling like, Am I the only one hot in here? Am I the only one that doesn't want to eat a salad for lunch? Am I the only one that had 4 hours of sleep? Am I the only one that, whose hair is falling out? Am I the only one? Like all these sort of things that can make you also feel very isolated from maybe the 20-year-old that you're managing, right? From those things. Because it can, and it does impact sort of your overall feeling about yourself as well.
I agree. And, so first of all, my first comment to that is like, I'm a huge fan of HRT. And I just want to say, for the record, any woman out there, girl, go see Jennifer and get yourself an HRT plan, because that's the answer to everything. You do not have to suffer. That's all I'm going to say for that. And, the other thing you do not have to suffer. And the other thing I want to say is that, within this whole, because everything, so the systems that we've been running by in life are breaking down. And I think we can all admit to that, whether it's how much we work, what we're willing to do, what we're willing to give up for money. The pandemic changed a lot of people's mindsets around their belief system of what it takes to actually be successful in their lives, including, is success really about money? So all of that has completely shifted, and it's going to keep dismantling, including how women even are willing to accept and relate to a menopausal process and what they're willing to allow that to be in their lives. I mean, I just feel like we have so much technology, and yet we can't figure out the human body. I call bull, of course we can figure out the human body. What's the advantage of not figuring out the human body? I'm telling you, it's because then we cycle people off. But if we figure it out, then how do we cycle people out of a role in a company to allow for new blood? You really have to question the design of society. This is a meta conversation right here.
I know. And maybe not even cycle out, but figure out a way in the system to support other people. And it doesn't have to be menopause. It could be someone going through bad anxiety and depression in your company. That's, I see that too. I do some corporate wellness events, and a lot of times we talk about how people are like, oh, no, I'm good at work, but then I go home and my life is a mess. And I'm like, no. Believe it or not, had you had relief from your anxiety, depression, even at work, even though you feel like you're successful and things are going well and you have more self-esteem, it affects these two go together. They really do. They really are connected. Really do. And what you don't know is the potential you could have had you had both that are sort of more in harmony. And I think that it would be great that corporations spend so much time on creating. I mean, think about how much cost goes into a company for people who are missing work because of panic attacks, anxiety. They get, their kids are sick. They have menopause symptoms, and they didn't, feel like a hot mess that morning. Like, how much could you really achieve if you actually had a system within your corporation for supporting wellness, where someone could say to you, listen, I'm on the edge, and it would not be a bad thing. Like, I'm on the edge, I need help. And they would say, hey, guess what? We got this health coach here who is happy to talk to you about what are the obstacles to your health. That's how great would it be, and so inexpensive than having all these workers gone for visits.
And how it would raise it would raise the bar on empathy and compassion among people within the organization. And obviously the productivity would go up. And so with the longevity, we're human animals. We love to be connected to other people. And when we're cared for and cared about, we're going to stick around. We're going to stay there. We're not going to be looking for the next shiny widget place to go, right? So there's two things I want to talk about before we end the show.
Sure.
And one is just present day mental health. I did a coaching session with a real estate broker yesterday that has a big business down in San Diego. And he came to my leadership retreat in January. And you know what he said to me, Jennifer? He said, that retreat was the first time I'd left my house since COVID. He goes, I've worked from remotely from home for like 3 years. And I remember him being in the retreat. He was just so afraid to speak up. He had out of the fear of what was going on in the world, and then the patterning of not getting out and interacting and interfacing with people, he had shut down to the point where like he couldn't have a eye contact conversation. You know, for 3 years he did everything over the phone.
Yeah, so I just want to say one thing about that. There's a book called The Blue Zones, which is about different zones in the world where people live over 100 years old, and they're concentrated in these areas. And and what's interesting about this book was that it's all over the world, right? They eat different foods, they have different cultures, they have different things. But the two things that connect them are, one, social connections.
Yeah.
The people who live the longest have connections to other people, relationships with other people. And two, living with a purpose. They had a purpose. Yeah, and it could be 100%. As simple as like, I'm getting up because I have to fix my garden today. Like, my garden is the most important thing for me to wake up every day over 100. Who knows what it is, but they have a purpose and they have social connections. And COVID really, really messed the social connection part up, right? I mean, we have a mental health epidemic now because people have been forced to be separate. I mean, even amongst relationships where people don't agree with the other people anymore, right? Family members and that kind of thing. And it's really just caused so much of that mental health issue right now because people don't feel connected to other people. They're struggling with that. Just like what you're saying, what he is feeling like he didn't go outside, he didn't go anywhere, and now he feels human contact. And it's like, whoa, the sun started, the sun came up.
Sun came out again. I know. It's so important to be connecting to people and just to not let yourself buy into the fear. You know, you've got to get out and keep connecting. I just want to pause for a second because we've got some great comments. David Cruz said nutrition is everything. So kind of going back to, earlier in the show when we were talking about nutrition, I can say that is like unequivocally 100% true. I mean, I went, I did a complete 180 back in August, and I went full on keto, healthy keto, and intermittent fasting. So I cut out all processed foods, all sugar, which is going to lead me to my next question for you. And it just it was like a godsend, I dropped 30 pounds and I have muscle tone that I didn't have before. My brain fog went away. And most importantly, the inflammation that was in my body, like the stiffness and the soreness, and, it's just gone. It's just gone. Like, I can't even tell you. I don't have to do any sort of chiropractic anymore, or nothing against chiropractors. I love my chiropractors, but now I'm stretching and I'm working out differently, and I'm spending more time outdoors. And yeah, that's really the key. And then we have another comment from Chick Carney. I love that. Chick Carney. My doctors think I'm crazy or confrontational because I challenge them. Good. Keep challenging them. That's awesome.
Find a new doctor.
Find a new doctor. Trade them in for a new one. So that leads me to this question, because I just talked to a client about this morning, and that's alcohol. If any of my viewers that knew me from back in the day, probably like scratching their head going, what's she going to say about alcohol? Because I used to be, man, I could hold my own, you know what I'm saying? And, but I'd pay for it. Like the hangovers were excruciating. And everybody says, now that I can't drink as much now that I'm older as when I was younger. And it's like, well, you probably don't practice as much, it's like a workout, if you're not practicing as much. But also I think our sensitivity to transmuting the glucose and how it hits our system is really the issue. Yeah. And is that a hormonal thing? Like, our hormones shift, so we can't transform that glucose and glycogen as quickly, or?
Yeah, exactly. So when you go through perimenopause and menopause, your estrogen and progesterone levels decline and insulin resistance goes up, meaning
menopause too?
Menopause too. Yep.
Okay.
And in fact, they're looking at new data saying that really insulin resistance is sort of what's causing inflammaging, which ultimately is leading to these higher dementia, Alzheimer's,
100%.
that kind of issue. Yeah. So it's sort of the spectrum. So yes, it is true that as your hormones do decline, estrogen is sort of a check for your insulin resistance, your insulin. And so sugar from the alcohol affects you differently than it did when you were 20. And so it can, and especially if you do it, like say late at night, if you're drinking 2 or 3 glasses before you go to bed, then not only does it cause more sugar spikes, which then ultimately, your insulin kicks in to get rid of those blood sugar spikes. But the rest of the night, you kind of are doing this.
It wakes you up.
Roller coaster, which wakes you up. Yep. And makes you pee because you woke up. But it also, the bigger issue is that your liver then has to deal with this extra sugar hanging around all night. So you're not really getting the effects of your liver getting to clean up your system at night like it should be doing. It's really dealing with this alcohol. And also the other issue is really it can bump your cortisol, which then makes you wake up at like 4 or 5, 6.
And you're wide awake.
And you're wide awake. Yeah, exactly. So it does really ultimately start with sort of those declining hormones causing insulin issues, blood sugar imbalances. And then most women in their 40s, or even men, both in their 40s and 50s, notice that they certainly have a harder time having the 2 or 3 glasses of wine at night to calm down, because it causes them disruption of their sleep. And a lot of times I talk to patients about that and say, well, what are you drinking the wine for? Because there are some people who use it to calm down. They get out of their crazy work day and they need it to just mellow out. And it's like, well, I can give you a lot more tools to mellow out. That's not going to make you sleep poorly and get up and pee a bunch of times. So there's some, there's a lot of balance in it. There's certainly, I don't tell patients they can't have alcohol at all, but you need to sort of look at sort of how does it affect you personally, your body.
Yes. So I'll tell you about the conversation I had with my client today. And, I've been working with this company for a few years, pre-pandemic actually. And I've noticed that whenever he's stressed, he's got to have a beer, like maybe for lunch or, mid-afternoon, they might pop out and have a beer and get back to the office. And so then he can't get up in the morning. Like it just, because the key here was to get him into a workout routine, anything. I didn't care what it was. I just wanted him to move his body because he was, high stress, rolling out multiple revenue streams, thinking, like there was a lot going on. He'd just taken over the company from his dad. So there was this like whole rollover from one leadership, one culture to another. And there was a lot of big stuff going on. And so, I've had some of these conversations with my male clients about you just got to lay off the booze, because you'll be way more everything, happier, productive, restful, de-stressed, resourceful, all of it. And today he just recently had some sort of an epiphany. He's like, okay, I've done it. I'm down to 1 drink a week. Like the guy wasn't an alcoholic. He wasn't like pounding back, a bunch of booze every day. But what I said to him a few months ago is, this is what I want you to do. Whenever you think you need a beer or a drink, whether it's, at lunch or after work or at home with your wife in the evening, I want you to ask yourself a question. Where's this craving coming from? Is this because I'm thinking about something fearful or negative, or is it because I'm telling myself I can't wind down? Like there's either a negative self-talk, a limiting belief, or a negative emotion that's present. And it took him a while to kind of like get into some sort of a routine with that. And it clicked this week. And he's like, that's it. I can get up earlier in the morning now. I'm down to 1 drink a week. And by this weekend, I'm phasing it out. And I'm like, this is a really powerful turning point for you. You've obviously done some work on yourself. So what about alcohol? I mean, it's just not sexy anymore.
Yeah, and I think you hit exactly with the client. What I talk about too is so much about what are you doing it for? What is it for? If it's to de-stress because you feel like you're, just wired when you get back from work, or then let's find another way to do that. Like, because ultimately it's really not actually helping you. It doesn't lower your cortisol. It doesn't make your body adapt to stress. Things like adaptogens do, which are wonderful. I mean, there's a lot of other ways to do that. I mean, sometimes I've had patients who, they have sort of a midday drink because they're out with clients, and so they feel tempted to do that. And I was like, what if you just went for a 20-minute walk? Yeah. If you just did breath work. And actually, I use a lot of times those continuous glucose monitors, CGMs. I love those. Because people like to see data. They like to actually see that their blood glucose stays decent when they do these other things, and that it works better. So I do think that the biggest question is, what are you doing it for? If it's a traditional thing and you're used to having a glass of wine at night because you're cooking and you're Italian and this is your thing, that's different than I come home and I can't deal, or I'm driving home from work and I'm just a mess. That's a whole different question and a whole different reason. So understanding why
it's an avoidance.
Is important. It's an avoidance.
It's an avoidance. Like, what are you avoiding? And then just have to really ask yourself the question: is the lack of sleep really worth it? Is it worth being tossing and turning all night because your system's overloaded by the sugar and the alcohol to actually have that drink before bed? Like, it just, to me, it's like all you have to do is reverse engineer anything in your life. Here's the result I'm living with. It sucks. Well, okay, so what happened before that? What was the behavior? Okay, what was the thought before the behavior? What was the emotion before the thought? Like, just reverse engineer it, and it'll show you what you're doing to yourself.
Same thing happens with food, right? People who typically have these afternoon snacks from 2 to 4, they have the same. I often will say, wait, are you actually hungry? Have you actually sort of thought about, like, am I really hungry or am I bored? or
avoiding something in your work.
Or avoiding something at work. Yeah. Like, or, it's someone always puts cookies out at 2:00 at work, and you just sort of feel like it's part of socializing to eat the cookie and talk, like what is it that's going on? And it's not just about cravings too. I mean, you can do things like have alcohol, then mess up your cravings for food. You end up eating poorly because of it. Yes. But if we're talking about without alcohol, it happens with food a lot. Patients start thinking about, like, oh, actually, I just do it because everybody eats cookies at 2:00. It's just a thing. And I'm like, well, maybe it doesn't have to be your thing.
So that is that societal fog again, being part of the tribe and just following along. And it's like, if everybody's headed that way, go that way. Just try something new for a change.
Yeah, I love trying things new.
Me too. I'm an adventurer. So what's the thing you want to leave people with? And then after you do that, tell them how to find you so they can work with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to leave people with the thought that really your health is not like a little box that you have separate from your work, separate from your relationships with your family, separate from it's all interconnected. If you don't feel good and you feel like something's wrong, you feel like it's not, you're not you, then really think about how you can find somebody that you can work with that will help you figure out what's going on, because it will actually positively impact your work and your relationships and your performance and your sleep and all the other things if you sort of figure out what's going on with your health. And then it's really, really important. And I think, and also one of my big mottos is live by example for my kids, right? Like, my big why I jumped from a very cushy, I shouldn't say cushy because OB/GYN is not cushy, but from a nice, easy job to like making my own thing was I wanted to live by example. Like, I wanted to say to my children and to other patients who have PCOS and Hashi and perimenopause, like, you can do it too. You just need to have a cheerleader and someone who can hear you and be heard so that you can change the way that you feel. So I think it's important that, if you want to do something different, you feel like something is not going right, that you get the answers that you need.
Absolutely. So how can they find you to do that?
So my website is wellwomanmd, WELLWOMANMD.com. I do see men, even though I'm an OBGYN, I have seen men. So I know it just tends to sort of lean towards women just because of being an OBGYN. So I have a website. I also have a podcast called Ignite Your Pow Her. And I interview a lot of people in the health and wellness space and introduce these new ideas of, all kinds of, like, there's a fasting coach, intermittent, like, intuitive eating coach. I interviewed lots of OBGYNs, like a lot of sort of healthcare professionals that can bring you different perspectives. And then I have Instagram is the same thing, Well Woman MD, and TikTok is Holistic Gyno is my TikTok handle.
Well, you'll get a lot of men on TikTok. Just joking. I'm full of beans today. Thank you so much for being here. This has been a really lively conversation. And, I think, so the health is everything, you guys, everything. If you don't have your health, ain't nothing else going to happen and move forward in your life, because you're not going to have the energy and the clarity of mind and the drive and the desire and the inspiration to do anything about anything. And I know what that's like. I've had my own health challenge where I was like sleeping for 3-4 hours every afternoon just to get through life. And I did that for months. So, but you can take charge of your health, and you do that through making choices, So if you're that person that says, I don't know how to cook, or whatever the justification or the excuse is, just cut it out. Just cut out the nonsense. It's a choice. Everything is a choice in life. You choose not to know how to cook. You choose to learn how to cook. You choose not to eat healthy. You choose to, just put something in your mouth because it's there and it's fast and it's easy, but you choose again not to pay attention to the repercussions of how that's going to bring your health down over time. I mean, who are we kidding here? Everything's a choice. And when you choose it, then you do something about it. But until you choose it, nothing's going to change. It's just you being a victim. And I know this is some harsh words to our viewers, but just stop being a victim. If you want something to be different, if you want things to change in your life, then you have to change things in your life. And that's just the long and the short of it. So thank you so much for being here today. This was brilliant.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that you're bringing these topics out there. And I often tell patients, be the CEO of your health, like the CEO of your life, like take control. And I love it. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. God bless. And remember, everybody, stay aligned, stay alert, and stay awake.